Hello, everyone. Once again, I'm Langston Clark, the founder and organizer of Entrepreneurial Appetite, a series of events dedicated to building community, promoting intellectualism, and supporting Black businesses. And today we have Teasha Cable, co-founder and CEO of C Model. And through advanced decision intelligence technology, C Model gives businesses insights into where they've been, where they are now, and what they're going into next. And so, Teasha, thank you for joining me here today. I just want to tell you, I didn't tell you this in the pre-recording part of the show, that I found out about you because I think I'm on like the Tulsa algorithm on LinkedIn. So me and my homeboy went to Tulsa like in the end of March. And so I was there for a writing retreat. I'm working on a book. He's a founder. He's got like a Black travel magazine he started. Shout out to Leroy Adams, founder of the Buddy Pass travel brand. So he was interviewing a lady there who was investing in real estate, but spends half the year in Africa and stuff like that. And so like I followed Tulsa, building Tulsa, all that stuff. And I saw your picture come up and I was like, yo, I want to start interviewing the people who have been in that Tulsa community of founders to learn about their experiences and whatnot. And so I thank you for being here and joining me today to share your story. So if we could begin, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to be the CEO and co-founder of C Model.
Yeah, so I think to really talk about who I am, to talk about where I come from. So I was born actually in New Orleans. I was born and raised there. I lived there till I was in high school. And then when I was in high school, we moved to Oakland,
Mm,
California. And so I spent my time there. I actually grew up on a square block in New Orleans with all my family.
yeah,
So moving and leaving at the time that we did was actually like really, it was fairly traumatic, but it was a lesson in how to be really self sustainable, right?
yeah,
How do I find the things that I like to do so that I can bring that anywhere? And it was in that I discovered that I had a little bit of a creative edge, but I wasn't all the way
yeah,
creative, right? I like to create things, but I like a lot of order.
yeah.
So I actually went back to New Orleans for my first couple of years of college, and then came and I had a couple of children. So I have daughters. Then my husband and I collectively have 6 children, 5 grandchildren. But so that's the who I am and how I
Yeah.
sort of developed along my journey. I walked into an office one day and they handed me a computer and they were like, "Hey, we need to know what our pipeline is." And I
Mm,
said, okay. I think I can figure that out. And they said, "Hey, and we also just bought this tool called Salesforce.com." So that was
mm,
like my entry into sales operations. That was like my
okay.
first sales operations job. What I loved is that it gave me the ability to be creative, right? To take what was naturally in me to be creative, but also take what was very orderly about me and use it in a business sense. So after doing that for God, I actually worked my way through the sales operations ladder. That turned into revenue operations.
Yeah.
Um, then I started thinking about some of the problems that we were solving. And some of that was really, how do you do things more accurately? How do I forecast more accurately? How do we decide more accurately? And that led me out to it while operating as both a VP of business operations at one point at Singularity. I was a VP of business development and product strategy. And then I was consulting in companies and going out and saying, could I repeat this? If the company has a different revenue model, will this work? If the company is in a different industry, will this work? And when I found that there were certain things like how a company is assessed, how to create a common language, how to determine which variables help to predict revenue, when I started to find those repeatable factors, then I decided that I would create C Model, and C Model would be software and it would do it for folks. Ultimately, going through the process of creating the company, we discovered decision intelligence as a science that was created by an academic. Her name is Dr. Lorian Pratt. And we met with her and we go, oh, this is really a really good baseline for everything we're talking about. It's like a
Mm,
perfect match. So let's take this very sort of scientific and academic structure of DI, which combines ML and AI and data, and let's use that as the baseline of the technology that we're building to solve very real, very complex problems for businesses who are trying to grow. And that leads us to where we are today.
so two quick questions. What is
Yes.
ML for people who don't know? And
Okay.
then say again what decision you said is it decision making intelligence or decision intelligence? What's the term again?
Yeah. So first, ML is machine learning.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And so AI, artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
ML, machine learning, and then predictive analytics is really a way of doing analysis on data using automation and algorithms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So to simplify what Cora,
mhm.
our tool does, to make it super simple,
Yeah.
it gives personalized recommendations around how to grow your business. She gives you data-driven insights. So
Mm,
what Cora actually does is she serves as like an AI-powered growth expert. So she's powered by decision intelligence, but she's really a strategic guider of users. So she'll give personalized recommendations. So she tailors those recommendations to the specific business in their profile. Then she gives data-driven insights. So she looks at historical data, she looks at benchmarks, so she goes into her knowledge base, and then she'll give like a really holistic view of potential outcomes and impacts on decisions that someone is making. And then she has this deep knowledge base and expertise in growth strategy. So how do you retain your talent? How do you do cost optimization? How do you optimize your revenue? And this way she can offer real actionable recommendations and best practices. And then she'll give a causal chain analysis. And this is going to sound more complicated than it is, but really it's the cause of and effect between the things that you are doing and the
mm,
things that you want to happen, right?
yeah.
What does that actually look like for decisions that I'm making? And she just puts that at the fingertips of our users.
That's what's up. I
Yes.
I just had to let you explain that because it for me it's like I'm not a techie type person, so I appreciate your ability to kind of break that down and
Yeah.
explain all the processes.
Yeah.
I've done a few interviews already for this particular series where we're highlighting Black tech founders. And um, one of the previous interviews, the woman I was interviewing, she was talking about the difference between being um, the technical founder and the business person. And so can you talk about like who are you in like this whole process of being the co-founder? Are you the technical person? Are you the business person? And how do you all manage like those roles and whatnot?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So I am a hybrid,
Mm,
what I would say, because my background is in operations and I've been responsible for technology. I understand how to architect technology.
mm,
Where I am not a coder though, right? So since I don't write code, you can't say I can architect what it is, and then it has to be developed by someone else. So in our situation, I am the business leader and the architect. And then I collaborate with our CTO, who is responsible for managing and building the technology itself, along with the team that he manages. And then my co founder, Jasmine, is our product designer.
mm.
And actually, she's our designer in chief for pretty much anything that needs to be made beautiful, because that's a special skill that she has, which is then to take complex architecture and turn it into very useful experiences for our customers. So that's kind of how we break down on our team. But there is a thing about not being the person who writes code, because I always have to plan for the expense of not writing code. I
Right.
also have to plan for the time, because it also means like I've got to translate that architecture. I've got to translate everything that I'm thinking into things that other people can develop for me, as opposed to me being able to go and develop it completely myself.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you broke down you're a hybrid in terms of your skills, but you're the business person in the business in terms of you being one of the co-founders. You kind of told us what C model is. Give us some insights on like who can use C model, right? So I told you about my homeboy Leroy. Leroy has the Buddy Pass travel brands. It's a magazine and a podcast. Can someone with a small business like him who's content creating use it? Can someone who's a tech founder use it? Like who gets to use C model?
Yeah. So the answer to that is yes. Leroy can use C model, specifically Cora, who could help him build decision models for all of his decisions. Um, we primarily, from a go-to-market standpoint, we target companies that are between 10 and 100 million in annual revenues, because there's an able to pay, a willing to pay piece of this, right?
Yeah.
There's also a data component. How much data? What's the quality of the data? How understanding the leadership team will be about these kinds of tools. And then also the last one I'll add is how much is the pain, right? When we think about the complexity of determining how to grow a company, what path to growth to take. Is this a sustainable growth model I need to build, or an exponential one, right? Are we going really fast, or are we going to take our time? Those are things that, startups face that. Startups at a certain stage start feeling the pain of it.
Mm,
Sense. So when you get to about the survival stage of your company, where now you might have a few paying customers, you might have some revenues, and you're really trying to decide, do you throw caution to the wind and grow by any means necessary, all investment in growth. When you make that decision, that has risks associated, right? That has external factors to consider. And at that point, these decision models become very helpful. I think at the earliest stages of a company, it might be a little less helpful. There are probably things to think about where decision models can help you, but the data impact is probably going to be less so.
yeah.
But she can still help you to determine, do I raise capital or not?
Mm,
Do I hire people or not? Those are the kinds of decisions she can help you to model.
yeah. So we had talked a little bit about you being a technical person, and you mentioned your co-founder, Jasmine. Now I was on LinkedIn. I was talking to you on LinkedIn, right? So I was like, I kind of find your co-founder. Now your co-founder's last name is Cable. It's hyphenated with something else. I can't remember what it was. So I'm assuming y'all are related somehow, some way. So tell us about your co-founder. How did you find your co-founder? How did you all decide to be co-founders and work to build out C Model and what you're doing? Hey everyone, thank you again for your support of Entrepreneurial Appetite. Beginning this season, we are inviting our listeners to support the show through our Patreon website. The founding 55 patrons will get live access to our monthly discussions for only $5 a month. Your support will help us hire an intern or freelancer to help with the production of the show. Of course, you can also support us by giving us 5 stars, leaving a positive comment, or sharing the show with a few friends. Thank you for your continued support.
Yeah, so Jasmine is my stepdaughter, and the way that we started to work together though was I would go in and do these consulting arrangements, and Jasmine would come in and do the business analytics as a part of those agreements. So we just started partnering years ago, working together, and we found that our styles were different, but we both added to every experience for customers. So we said, how do we continue to expand that? So we've just been aligned on how to solve complex problems in companies from the very beginning. And when we started working together, we just proved that we could do it over and over again, faster and better. And so there was no doubt that when C Model started, it wasn't something that we would do together.
Wow. If there was a piece of advice that you could give to someone who was building a startup with family, what would that be? And I want to add this point. And this isn't to dismiss the businesses, the small businesses that like Black folks typically get into with family, like restaurants, could be a barbershop, all of those things. But I'm talking about something that's the way I imagine C model is like you all are trying to change the way people do business at scale, right? So this is
Right.
like this is a big scale business changing type of business, right? And so from that perspective, what is it like? What insights, what advice do you have for someone who's working with family or somebody who's really close to them?
Yeah, I would say so. I have a lot of key learnings from this process. One is communication is everything, and that is communication uh, in full transparency and honesty and separation.
Hmm.
So work is work, and family is family. And we're learning now. And we're learning how to do this together, right? We're learning how to be a family and be a company that plans to scale. Doing this is very hard. Startups are difficult. Technology startups are even harder.
Yeah.
And technology startups that are going to be big billion-dollar companies are even harder. So there already is difficulty in what we're doing. But our commitment is to a shared purpose and a shared mission. And so those things are always on the forefront for us. And my key learnings in this is that when we effectively communicate with one another, it's smooth sailing. And this is really, in all sort of like leadership of anything. But in the case where it's family members, it's even more, right?
Yeah.
There's even more communication. If you communicate it double. The other thing is to constantly check in that we are still aligned on our mission and our purpose. And that is ultimately the one thing where Jasmine and I constantly go, okay, this might have been a hard moment, but guess what? We are still aligned on our mission and our purpose. And so we're ready to keep going into the next phase of this. And then we celebrate as family members separately, and we celebrate as co-founders separate from our family
Oh,
celebration.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So and I'll give you an example. So
Hmm.
we're here in Tulsa and together, and but we just went home right for the
Hmm.
weekend, and so we had an opportunity to be in California together, and we had a family level celebration, and that was fun. And we didn't talk about C model, right?
Yeah.
At our family celebration, we could talk about what we're doing. We're having success to update our family, but we don't talk about C model, right? We're not having business level conversations other than sharing our successes with our
Yeah.
family. And then secondarily, when we are working, right, we're in work mode because
Mm.
they're very delicate things, right, to manage in that in the relationship. So we this is work, and so work is about our continuous feedback loop and being super supportive co-founders, which is different.
Yeah. That was really good insight. Um, I'm gonna take that with me and my wife. We don't have the same business, but we have our business conversations where we're supporting one another, giving each other advice. But I don't know that we separate like our business conversations from our like personal, and we get to celebrate twice when we get a W. So I just want to celebrate more, right? So I'm definitely gonna take your suggestion on that. We talked about finding your co-founder. One of the things that like me personally, and I'm just a podcaster and a community builder, but like, man, I'm scared to build a team. Like, I'm so scared to hire a virtual assistant. I don't know what it is. I think if I'm being transparent, I'm scared to hire somebody to edit the podcast. Like I do it all on my own. So what was it like for you to start building your team beyond your co-founder?
Whew, so I have been so blessed. I have been so blessed. Oh my. So our CTO is someone who I've worked with for years. And so him coming into the team was someone I had experience with working. I've got a chief of staff. She also, who does our go-to-market work. She also has been someone I worked with in the past. So that trust around who those people are has been important. I also run a very lean, we have a lean machine,
Mm,
partly based on where we are as a company, and secondary because I always believe that you can do more with less, depending upon what the thing is. So right now, at this stage of our company, I try to just keep it as lean as possible, but the trust is very important with hires, right? Who are these people? And what do we know they can do? And so that's just a critical one. But you cannot have fear of hiring. You need people to help you. If you
yeah,
define what it is that you need done in specific enough of terms, and then effectively communicate around those things, then what you'll find is that people will do their very best anyway to live up to that set of requirements. And if there is a capacity issue and they can't, then as long as you're paying attention, you'll know that soon enough to make adjustments. And then you just make adjustments fast, is all I
yeah,
would say.
yeah,
Make adjustments fast. But yeah, I would not hold back on hiring because you could keep doing stuff and find yourself in the hole, right?
yeah.
You have to be able to effectively delegate. That is a skill of a leader, right? Is being able to delegate to others, knowing what and when to delegate is a part of that skill. And
Facts.
all of us have to have it.
It's probably better for me to start now.
100%.
You gonna have to, I'm at some point I'm gonna do bad at it. So I might as well do bad at it now, learn from it and just get better in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, and what is doing bad? Like if you think of startups as like this whole experiment, right? Everything is experimental. Like you're
Yeah.
trying everything. Nothing is set in stone. You know, you have assumptions, and assumptions can be proven true or false, but we haven't done any of these things before. So every single bit of it is can turn into folly. But you as long as there's learning, as long as there is a way to think in retrospective about what it is that you've done, then there's no loss because you've learned something and you gain new insights. So I wouldn't be afraid if I'm you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I told you before that we're like a quasi podcast book club, okay? And so there was this book I was reading years ago. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but the guy who wrote the book was talking about all of these things you need to do to be prepared for what's coming in the future. And one of the examples that he talked about was Singularity University. I was like, what is this? I used to live in Austin, Texas. So there's a Singularity Austin. I've always been kind of curious about like what happens in Singularity University. To me, it's like this secret society of tech people who are like trying to take over the world, like Pinky and the Brain. And so can you talk about what Singularity University is and what being in a community, in a work environment like that, where people are very tech, transform the world minded, how that kind of set you up to be, one of the founders of C Model?
Yeah. So, matter of fact, I the impact of Singularity University on both my career and my outlook, which turned into C Model, was humongous. So when I joined Singularity University, I didn't know about exponential technology at the level that I experienced while there. I didn't know that, AI could just literally change the world. All of this stuff seemed like it was foreign, like it was all
Mm,
made up. But then really experiencing, watching the companies that came from Singularity University, watching them help people incubate ideas and turn them into real profitable companies that were doing great things around the world, like actually solving either sustainable development goals or what they used to call global grand challenges, right? So you have hunger and poverty. I mean, there's so many
yeah.
elements. And then the other part was really having an opportunity to work with and see how we were helping to transform really the economic landscape, because they worked with, large Fortune 100 companies to ensure that they weren't also disrupted by technological advancements. And so as these companies will come through Singularity, I will go, wow, it's amazing how companies invest in understanding so that they can protect their future. And
Mm,
that is something, right, that I have taken away. And C Model is actually born of this idea that every company needs some sort of high performance growth engine. And Quora is exactly that,
yeah.
right? Why wouldn't they need that in order to get ahead of how they make the most critical of their business decisions around growth? And because if they don't have the future in mind, if they can't see the things that could potentially impact their success and consider that in their decisions, those are all the kinds of things that Singularity, I thought, brought and really layered into my thinking. Not to mention, we had so many sort of elements of our business model that it made it really, really helpful for me to learn and understand how to help so many different companies, because I was in the space of so many different companies.
Yeah. So we talk about being in the space of different companies. And I mentioned to you before that I visited Tulsa in March of 2023. You mentioned also that you're there right now. And there's something about the culture in Tulsa when I got there that was a little bit different. Um, so me and my homeboy, we were walking on the street because we had like 2 or 3 hours before we could get into our Airbnb. Man, and these Black folks would just come up to start talking to us. Like this, it was almost like being in a deep South pre-integration where everybody was just happy to see everybody. You would just talk, like these people just come talk to us. And so what is it like being in Tulsa in what I imagine is a community of people who are founders, maybe a little different than the culture of Singularity University, but the overall culture of like uplift that like I experienced there for a week, and I'm just writing a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, what has that experience been like for you? And just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I am often amazed at how cohesive the Tulsa community is. So I actually met folks from the Tulsa community at Black Tech Week
Mm,
last year. And that was the beginning for me. That was the first phase. And these are people that kept in touch with me, folks that took every call that I made. And then I ended up in Tulsa last year with a Lightship boot camp with the Lightship Foundation, Lightship Capital. And when I was here, what I noticed was the same thing. So not only was it being out on the street and having people say hello, but it was actually like being in places where I'm talking about my business, and the same Black people and others are now highly interested and supportive in helping in any way that they can possibly help. Finding the forums and community events that they often have available to people here in Tulsa. I think when they talk about the sort of spirit of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, they're like standing by their words. And there are a few of the organizations like Build in Tulsa.
yeah,
I think about Ashley Sims and Desiree. I think about Trey with Techstars. I think about Brian Brackeen and Candace Brackeen of Lightship, and Charlton of Lightship. These folks are really doing the real, true work of one, building something really special, but then also taking like what is a Southern town that had a very traumatic past, by the
yeah,
way, and making it a welcoming place for tech startups, right? Like it's almost like a crazy thing, a crazy idea, but because of their sort of kindness and sort of the sort of access to resources, it seems to be working.
all right. So you
Yeah.
mentioned Techstars, And so this is where we're getting into stuff like I have no idea about. Like I'm familiar with Tulsa. I visited, I had a great experience. I have no clue what Techstars is. What is Techstars and how has that been part of your journey?
Yeah, so I actually have a double whammy relationship with Techstars. I actually started first as a mentor in Techstars in the DC accelerator. So Techstars is a pre-seed investor. They invest in tech companies that are on the rise. They're very selective, and they're, I think, in total in the world, only about 3,000 or so companies that ever make it into
Mm,
the Techstars ecosystem. And so my first batch was to be a mentor, and I mentored the Alive Podcast Network. Let
mm,
me know introduction. And so Angel Levis. So I did that. And then after I said, man, I want a me.
yeah.
I would like to have that sort of support. And so, considering the relationships that I had started to build here in Tulsa, and the fact that I wanted to participate in a tech accelerator that was going to offer mentorship, it was a good fit for me to apply. And then we were selected. And what Techstars does is they invest in their companies, and then they accelerate you. So over the course of 3 months, our company is being accelerated, everything from go-to-market strategy and customer acquisition, which includes customer acquisition and fundraising.
Okay. So they basically setting you up.
That's pretty much what they do. They give you a chance. Our company was created to give opportunity, and I feel Techstars is very similar. It's all about giving you a chance. They can't go out and build your product for you, but they can ensure that you know, are thinking about it the right way. They can't go out and sell your product for you, but they can set you up in an ecosystem full of potential prospects, right? And also give you resources to accelerate development in order for you to go do that. They can't pitch for you, but they can put you in front of investors in order to help you to give you the opportunity to get that capital. So it's really, to me, the opportunity game with them.
Okay. So we talked about Singularity. We talked about Tulsa. We talked about Techstars. I also saw on your profile this AWS Impact Accelerator. So what is that? What does that do? And how has it accelerated you as well?
Yeah, so what's great is we joined the AWS Impact Accelerator last year. It was one of our first outings as a company, and it was great. We were able to advance our technology a bit. I met wonderful people. The AWS ecosystem is also very supportive, very helpful. And this particular accelerator was for Black founders, and it was their first one.
Mm,
And it was great validation because we were selected from over 1,600 companies that had applied. And there were only 25 of us selected.
yeah.
A group of people who I still consider to be my family, right? And some of them are our customers, some of them we are their customers. And so that's another thing that also came out of that experience. But AWS is really committed to startups, right? The idea is to, you know, that you advance your technology quickly. They have so many solutions in the mix. I know that there are others with lots of solutions too. I can only talk about AWS because I was in their program, and we've actually built using their framework. But then I would say the thing that I got the most out of AWS,
Yeah.
the thing that was the most impressive to me was they have these core principles that they operate on.
Hmm.
And they, all along the way through the accelerator, they kept demonstrating to us how they use these core principles. And I can't tell you how many times in my company we reference those principles. We always ask ourselves questions around 1 and 2-way doors. We constantly are asking ourselves, like, how far did we think about this? Have we documented it? Does everyone understand it? So there's a lot of different things that we got from a big company culture that we wouldn't have had to start building the foundational parts of our startup. And because they take a more decentralized approach, it's really helpful to take these things that they're using, even though it's a big company, in small groups, and then apply them to our small startup. So it was helpful in that way too. And we met fantastic people, and they continue to support us.
Yeah. So if there's one, it seems to me like one of the major takeaways from this interview is um, oftentimes you hear people say entrepreneurship is a lonely endeavor, it's a lonely job. You'll be up all night. It might be you alone or you and your co-founder. But it seems to me like you have found community to be able to give you like a sense of support, um, and even family, people you can lean on who are going through similar experiences. So just talk about the importance of finding that in your journey as a founder.
Man, here's what I'll tell you. Community is everything. Community is everything, no matter what it is that you're doing. We're living in a fallacy if we think that we can achieve the things that we need to achieve by ourselves. And that's in general in life, let alone in a startup where you're going from nothing, an idea, a speck of information on a page, into something that's going to be so big that leaders are going to be transformed into outcome focused visionaries, right? There's no way for me to do that by myself.
Yeah.
So the community elements have been really important. And those communities have purposes, right? They have and they have legs and arms that help you find other people to help you to do things. People in general need to understand and support one another in the things that we do without fear. Fear is often the one thing that gets in the way of how we build community and how we find ourselves showing up in those communities. But once you sort of drop all of that and you know that really there's nothing that negative, there's really nothing negative that people can do to you that you don't let happen, then you start to embrace community. You start to go, oh, if I talk to such and such and tell them about my idea, maybe they can introduce me to 5 people who can help me to take the next step with that idea. And then maybe once I've got this idea formulated, instead of being afraid to share that more broadly, maybe what I get instead is a community of people who will try something out that I built. And then those people eventually will turn into people who will pay me for it because they liked it so much, and then once people are paying me, listening to their feedback, right? Really hearing what they say actually helps me to broaden that scope. So you see how community can do so many things, right? And then I can talk to these people about helping me to fund what it is that I'm doing. And I can talk to these people for emotional support when this stuff gets hard, because it does,
Yeah.
right? And I can, and then I can go on and on and on about all the ways that people need people, especially when you're trying to build something for people.
Man, that was a mic drop right there. So I have two final questions. This question is not one that we talked about before we got into the interview part, but I think it's valuable. So my main job is I'm a university professor, and where I work right now, I'm the Black professor that engages with Black students, Black male students in particular, but I would say Black students in general, right? Both male and female. So it's I have that burden of being a Black professor on campus. So students need mentors, all that stuff. Like they come to me. All right. So let's say a student comes in my office and they're like, Dr. Clark, I want to go work for this Fortune 500. I want to go work for Google, okay? Or I want to go work for this startup. Why should I tell this student to go work for a startup? Now, I have my own insights because my wife worked for a unicorn startup. And so I know the benefits of being there at the beginning or before, you sell for $1 billion or you go live on the stock market or whatever. But how would you have that conversation with a college student? You need to come work for me at C Model or whatever other startup, because here are the benefits to doing so.
Yeah. So the number one benefit is the space to experiment and fall, right? The place to take chances, to fail, to leverage your creativity. Startups allow that. Startups actually allow exponential thinking in a way that's much harder in already orderly environments. My advice here, though, is going to be a little bit mixed, because I
Mm,
think that there's some value to working in stringent environments when you're learning how to do specific things, right? So coming out of college, for example, nothing wrong with going to learn to see how things are done, understand what the world looks like before you come in and get into like a startup environment where you're going to change that. It
mm,
really just depends on your perspective, right? Because there's also the why ever work in someone else's company when I can build for myself. I support that. That's a view of life that didn't necessarily exist for me growing up. Like, I didn't think that that was the way to go. I always thought like you got to go get a job. Like, that's the way it works.
yeah.
I just didn't know. Take your own ideas and bring those things to life, no matter what those things are. So I love that the opportunity exists to be that way, but I don't discredit what experience actually does, what knowing and understanding the problems that you want to solve does. And if your problems have anything to do with things that people are already doing in the world, sometimes you need to get a little more information, learn about those things. Sometimes you got to go work in the mailroom, right? So you understand what's necessary in the mailroom, and then you work your way up sometimes, right? Sometimes it's like I said, it's just about you get out here, you try and you fail, and then you go and you go and you learn along the way. Really just depends on what you're solving.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we a quasi book club. What books are you reading? Have you read, or would you suggest that have provided you some inspiration in your journey as a founder, as someone working in tech, as someone trying to, change the world through your business?
Okay, so full transparency here, I've picked up 5 books over the past few weeks and have tried to get started and have not finished anything, right? Because it's been so much of a crunch time. But I will talk about this one book that I read years and years and years ago called On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis. It's really a handbook.
Mm,
And it's a handbook on leadership. And what I takeaway, that the thing that was most important to me out of that book was that you need a handbook, right? So you can't decide to lead anything without having sort of this some structure to it, right? There's got to be a plan on how you will handle things. And On Becoming a Leader was just a really great sort of book for me. There's a few other books. Levers is one that's been super helpful as we think about the levers to growth, but everything else has been all pretty much articles and research based and not necessarily uh, books. My mom has been begging me to pick up and read her book. She just released a book and she's been asking me to read it, but it's fiction. That's the other thing. I'm like, oh, it's fiction, Mom. I want to be supportive, but I haven't been able to dig in to read, 20 chapters at once.
yeah. What's your mom's book? If your mom's book on is it on Amazon?
It is. Her name is Alice Wilson Freed. And
Okay.
so she's got 3 books. She's got a set of mystery novels. I think it's a trilogy. 2 of them may be there, and then a book called Menopause, Sisterhood, and Tennis. I don't know if you have any interest in that, but great. But yeah, no, she's great. Yeah. Sorry about my book answer. It's probably not
No,
amazing.
no, actually, listen, that answer was good. And I just getting back to your response about the books, right? I think a lot of times we go to New York Times bestsellers, Amazon bestsellers in business for books, things like that. But like, yo, if you really dig into some research, you can get the information about like how to run your business or what's happening in this industry before it trickles down to like regular people, and people have access to university databases at their public libraries. So I think that advice was right on time and needed. And So yeah, Teasha, thank you again for taking the time to speak with me off a LinkedIn message. We don't know each other, but like you blessed me with this interview, and I wish the best of luck to you. I don't know if you're gonna need it because like you're doing the things that you need to do to get things done. And I look forward to hearing about C Model as you all go to scale, go to market, and become $1 billion business. So thank you again for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Go sign into the create a a wait list. Go join the wait list.
I will.
And then tell anyone else to join it too. The more people, the better.
For sure. Thank you again. And Teasha, I will let you know a few weeks in advance before this episode publishes. And then the video one, I'll have a guy edit it and things like that. So where things got sloppy, we'll clean it up. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You have no idea. This was a great interview. Thank you much.
All right.
Bye-bye. Yep.